Hello, in this tutorial I'll give you a few tips for using Microsoft Excel that can save you many hours of work. So let's start with tip 1, how to copy a formula in adjoining cells. I've seen many people struggle with this. So let's say we have some sales data here. Here I have my order quantity and here is the unit price, and let's say I want to find out the total price, which is going to be a formula where we are multiplying the order quantity multiplied by the unit price. So this is the total price for 6 ordered items at a unit price of 38.94. Now I have to copy this formula downwards. The only problem is that this sheet is a humongous sheet. And if I can just show you, I'm just to reach the end of this sheet, all I need to do is to press Control and the down arrow, and you will notice that this sheet has 8,400 rows. Likewise, to go back up to the top, I can just press Control and up arrow key, and I'm right at the top. So my problem here is that I could have actually dragged my formula using the cell handle, but then that will be a long drag because I have to go down all the way to 8,400 cells. So what I do instead is that I calculate my formula in the first cell, and then I carefully take my cursor to the end of this cell handle where it turns into a solid plus. And the moment it turns into a solid plus, all I have to do is to double click. And all my cells are automatically populated with the formula. All 8,400 cells in a second. So this is how I can populate my formula in any cell or any number of cells. Once I have calculated it for one cell, after calculating the formula, I go to the edge of this cell, and the moment my cursor becomes a solid plus sign, I double click on it to populate all the cells that are below this particular cell. So this is a great little trick, but it works only when there is a populated column to the left or right of this column. Now let's say we have a slightly different situation. We want to make a total, but this time in column W. And as we can see, the columns to the left, that is V, and the column to the right, that is X, both of these columns are not populated. So let us see if the trick that we have seen before works in such kind of a situation. So what we're going to do is to come here and multiply our quantity with the unit price and get the total price as before. Now we want to copy this formula into all the cells down below, and so we reach the corner handle and double click, and nothing happens. So this trick does not work if there is an empty column to the left or right or both. And in this kind of a situation, we have to use a slightly different method. So what I'm going to do is to delete this formula. Now the first thing that I need to do here in this situation is to go to my name box and select the entire range. So I already know that the last cell is 8,400. So I'm going to select cells from W2 to W8400. Once I have my cells selected, all I need to do is to come to the formula box and enter my formula as before. So I'm multiplying the quantity with the unit price. And now instead of pressing enter, I press Control enter. And the moment I do that, the entire cell range is populated with the formula. So this is how you can copy a formula to any number of cells in Microsoft Excel and save yourself a lot of time. Let's now look at another neat tip: how to move or reposition columns in Microsoft Excel. This can take a lot of time if you don't know how to do this. Let's say I want to reposition my columns D and E, or let's say C and D, the order date and shipping cost, near the order quantity column, column P. So how can I do this? You can do this very easily by selecting both the columns and then moving your cursor to the edge of the selection. When the cursor changes into a four-headed arrow, then press the Shift key and then drag these cells to the position. As you can see here, this is the position locator. So I want to bring it just before my order quantity column. So I drag and bring it here and then just leave. So both my columns are actually repositioned or moved from their original location to their new location. And this can save you a lot of time. Let's now look at another interesting tip. Tip number 3, how to insert multiple rows and columns in an Excel sheet. Let's say I'm in my sales data sheet and I'm located at row number 12 and I want to insert 5 rows before rows number 12. So the way I can actually insert an empty row is to right click and then press insert. But this method only inserts one empty row, whereas I want 5 empty rows. So let me just undo this. If you wanted to insert multiple empty rows, all you need to do is to select 5 multiple rows, or as many rows that you want to insert. Okay, in this case I want to insert 5 empty rows. Right click and press insert, and 5 empty rows will actually get inserted. If you want to insert 10 empty rows, you can select 10 filled rows, right click and press insert, and 10 filled rows will actually be, empty rows will actually be inserted. The same is with the columns. If you wanted to insert 2 empty columns, select 2 columns and then right click and press insert, and 2 empty columns will actually be inserted. So this is how you can insert multiple rows or columns, blank rows or columns in an Excel sheet, and save yourself a lot of time. Now 2 quick tips related to charting in Microsoft Excel. Tip number 4, how to create a chart sheet. Now this is a really interesting tip, and many people who have worked many years in Microsoft Excel haven't even heard about it. Let's say I have some data here, and as you can see, I have marks for 4 students in physics, chemistry, biology and maths. And let us say I want to plot a chart, a column chart of this data. So I select the data range, then I go to insert, and then I choose column, and I make a 2D column chart of this data. And the chart appears in this sheet, which is called as marks. Now for better readability, let me just switch columns. So you have marks in these 4 subjects for each of these students. Now this chart is called as an embedded chart because when you created this chart, it appears inside the worksheet holding the data. Or in other words, this chart is embedded inside the mark sheet. But it doesn't have to be so. What you can do is to move this chart to its own sheet, and that sheet is called as a chart sheet. And the way you can actually do this is to actually go here to move chart, which is incidentally also available if you right click on the chart area. You can choose it from here as well and click. Now you are asked to answer a question. Do you want to move this chart to a new sheet? That is exactly what I want to do. And so you can give a name here. And having chosen new sheet, I will just simply say OK, and my chart appears on an entirely new sheet in this workbook, and this sheet has no cells but only the chart. And this kind of a sheet is called as a chart sheet. You will also notice that almost all options that are available when you are working with a normal worksheet are grayed out inside a chart sheet, and only those options are visible or available that can help you work with this graph. One of the great advantages of a chart sheet is that irrespective of the size of the window, the chart is always visible. So as you increase or decrease the size of this window, the chart resizes itself to show in the size of the window that you have selected. So this is a really great tip to store all your charts. Now what can also happen is that if I was to go back again to my marks worksheet, this chart has already been ported to the chart 6 sheet. What I can also do is to reverse this process, and I can do this by coming to my chart 6 sheet, right clicking on the chart, and then choosing move chart once again, and this time I want to send it back again to my mark sheet, and I'll just simply say OK. So that same chart can come back again, and you can see that the chart sheet has actually disappeared. So in order to create a chart sheet in summary, you just have to right click over the chart area, move chart, and then choose new sheet and say OK, and you have a sheet that is completely dedicated to chart. Let's now come to a final tip of this tutorial. So for this example, I have downloaded mean minimum temperature over 100 years starting from 1901 to 2000 for 6 Indian cities from January to December from the Indian Meteorological Department's website. For example, the mean temperature for the month of January for Srinagar over 100 years is -2.3, and here you have data for all other cities. So now I want to plot this data in a chart, but instead of choosing a regular chart, I just want to see a trend inside one cell. And starting from 2010, Excel 2010, we can do this using the sparkline feature. To insert a sparkline, you have to go to Insert, and then from the sparkline groups, choose a line or a column or a win loss. So I'm going to choose a line. I'll just click on this, and then it is wanting me to point to the range of cells that the graph will show. So I will point out to the range of cells and then say OK. So the moment I do that, I have my general trend chart, which is showing data, the trend of the data across the row. A sparkline is a graph that fits in one single cell. It doesn't have an axis, it doesn't have any labels, and it shows just the general trend across the row. And once my cursor is positioned inside the sparkline cell, I can click to see the high point, the low point, the negative point, and a few other pieces of information if I wanted to do so. With the click of a button, I can change my sparkline chart from line to column, and also from column to win-loss charts. So if I click on the negative points, I can see the negative points, the negative temperatures in a slightly different color. So I can change the color using some of the styles that are available. So to move the sparklines to the other cells, all I need to do is to drag the cell like a formula, and then I have a sparkline chart for every single cell. So this is how you can actually create a sparkline. You can change the colors of negative points, high points, low points, just simply by clicking on the marker color and choosing a color of your choice. How do you get rid of sparklines? Just select the cells which are having sparklines, right click, and then just choose sparklines and say clear selected sparklines, and the sparklines will vanish. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and I hope you can use all these tips.